Hi and welcome to this live stream on Webpiano Academy. Today I have here with me Dr. Emily Boyce. She's a pianist and has appeared as a soloist throughout the United States and China. She currently serves as Associate Professor of Piano at Buffalo State College, where she teaches piano, class piano, and accompanying. Welcome. Now, today we are going to talk about how to prepare for a performance. What is the best way to prepare for any performance?
My early training did not really involve how to really practice, how to prepare to be able to get up on stage, deal with the excitement and the adrenaline, and to be able to then play all the things that you work so hard on in the practice room that always come out so beautifully when you're by yourself. And then we get frustrated because they don't happen that way in the moment of performance. So I think preparing for an effective performance has to start right from the first day of practicing. Rachmaninoff says the most efficient way to memorize a piece is to use the one which proceeds in an error-free manner. And so, by extension, we could say the most efficient way to learn a piece is to just never do it wrong, right? This is, it's unrealistic that we will never make a mistake. But if we can practice, if we can learn our notes and then practice in a way that doesn't give our brain a lot of other options than to do it the way that we want, that's an important step, I believe. So how do we do this? Well, before we start learning a new piece, hopefully we have access to recordings. Nowadays, we have access to almost any recordings that we want because of the internet. But it's important, I think, to teach our students and also for ourselves to not just listen to the top hit on YouTube, but to seek out interpretations of the great artists. Yeah. And used to, we would go to the CD store and just run to the Horowitz section or run to the Alicia de la Rocha section just to get our hands on anything that they played, because we wanted to hear what these great artists did. So certainly having a piece in our ear, at least somewhat before we began practicing, is really important. And then when we finally are ready to start learning, I am not the best at this, but I think it's important to warm up. Certainly by the time we're approaching performance, we're warming up and doing lots of technique every day. But even at the beginning, getting that scale regimen, getting the regimen of etudes that are beneficial is really important. And, just sort of apocryphally, I've found that I find better fingerings when I'm learning something new if I'm warmed up. Sometimes if I don't warm up, I find what I think are good fingerings, and then the next day I come back and I'm like, this is crazy. Who would think of these fingerings? These are terrible. And I have to start again. So even in that one day, I've already shown my brain more than one option in terms of doing it. Right. And perhaps you found this too, that sometimes a mistake that we made early in the learning process pops up when we're on stage, even if we haven't made that mistake in months.
Yeah, I remember I participated in Maria Canal's competition in Barcelona, and you had to play two movements or one movement of Beethoven Sonata, and I was playing the 109, and I made a mistake in the Adagio, and I couldn't forget that mistake. So the next year, participated in the same competition with the same sonata for the first round, made the same mistake because my brain went back to that moment and I couldn't remember. I mean, I never made that mistake in practice, but I repeated exactly the same mistake, exactly in the same way. I mean, it seemed almost a recording of my brain replaying on the stage.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's so fast. Our brains are so fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience with the Chopin E minor concerto. I played it in the first round of a competition, the 16th right after the opening chords, and I missed it in the rehearsal and then, or in the first round, and then I practice and practice and practice and practice and practice, and I did the exact same thing in the finals. Naturally did not win. But yes, so when we can minimize those errors right from the get-go, it's definitely going to lead to a performance, even if a better performance, even if that performance is weeks or months away.
Yes. To my students, I think you do the same too. I always suggest to play as it is already the performance. So like same hand movement, same kind of, the same way that you would play if the piece is already being fast, if the piece is already being performed with the same kind of dynamic. Oh, here I have a crescendo. So I pay attention to those things in that moment when I'm learning it, so that I don't have to learn and relearn and relearn and relearn. So I learn already kind of as it would be that way, even though they're just two measures, that I'm playing the first two measures of a new piece. I try to teach them just to learn them in the right way, so that, okay, then these two measures are done. Then you just repeat it. You add the next two measures and afterwards. And so that's very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Why learn five different pieces? Just learn the piece as it is. I'm a big fan of working from the end. I will almost always start with the last few measures of a piece. And the reason I like this so much is because, if our goal is to minimize incorrect notes, incorrect rhythms, anything inaccurate at the beginning of a learning process, working backwards allows us to say, okay, I'm going to work only 4 measures, and then I get to the end, and then I will back up. And as I play forward, I'm already practicing into a passage that I already know. If I practice from the beginning, inevitably I will get impatient and I will play forward into new areas, and I will probably, make some mistakes and start to learn some inaccuracies. So taking a very small chunk of information, and then, as you said, of course, repetition is so important. Our brains learn in small chunks. When we think about how we organize our phone numbers, our security numbers, our words, right? We don't after a certain age, we don't read the letters anymore. We see a shape. So our brain is used to grouping things. And so recognizing that working in small chunks allows our brain to really focus on a small bit of information and to learn it much better than if we try to practice, say, an entire page of music.
I think many students, especially when they're so worried about learning the entire piece, that they forget exactly that, to learn in chunks and to put the chunks together. It's better to practice half an hour, 2 measures, rather than playing an entire piece slow, because then you have forgotten the entire thing after half an hour. You've played the entire thing slow, and you don't have time to repeat. So it is better to learn that part that's wrong and repeat many, many, many times. And then that part is good then.
So true. I often draw the connection, like if I ask my students, if you had to learn a list of all of the presidents of the United States, you wouldn't just read the list from beginning to end over and over and over again. You would learn a few of them at a time, and then you would start to make connections with years and important events. And so it was president during World War II, or so-and-so was president in 1900. And so must we learn music, bit by bit, small chunks, and then we start to make connections between motives, harmony, melody. Theoretical analysis really helps us to identify familiar shapes and patterns. If you know something is an F major scale, you may not have to practice it so much because you've already practiced a million F major scales when your teachers made you go practice them in lessons.
When we know the theory and we are applying the theory to learn a piece, it's not just a matter of really knowing and analyzing the piece. I think there's this music theory is, I'm interested. If I have to write a paper about that, that's fine. But if I'm a performer, I just want to know what details are there so that I can highlight certain things instead of just knowing that it is a dominant chord, for example. But why is the dominant there? Where is it going? How is this useful to the music? And what is the composer doing with that? Noticing those things makes you think about what kind of things can I do here to make that piece more interesting and more kind of appealing to a listener than at one point?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think about theory a lot in the early and middle stages of the learning process on the small scale, with, like I said, motive and harmony, but then also form, relate to something that happened 5 or 10 minutes ago in the piece. And how will I interpret this to help an audience make that connection, or to show variety? If I shaped a phrase a certain way, in the exposition, for instance, I might do something a little bit different when it comes back around to create some artistic interpretation. I also think that something that's so important in the early stages of the learning process that will lead to more solid performances is finding things that will reliably, and using this idea of playing through sometimes fast early on. Right. One of my teachers was a big fan of this because she told the story of when she was learning a Prokofiev piece slowly, and she got to the end, and then she finished learning it slowly, and then as she went to speed it up, she found all these passages that the fingerings didn't work at full tempo, and so she had to go back and relearn all of those passages, and of course that would be devastating to have spent a month or two practicing with one particular, and then to have to change it. That could certainly bring about some problems when we're on stage.
So once you have learned the entire piece, how would you just proceed then? Where the piece you have learned it.
Okay. So yes, once I have learned all my notes, and really I'm a person who kind of learns and memorizes more or less at the same time, so that by the time I'm able to play a piece from beginning to end straight through, it's memorized. And I will now I've gotten older, and I can discipline myself enough not to play. We all want to play it right now. Who wants to practice? But we learn over time the benefits of going slow and clean and perfect at the beginning of the learning process, so that when we're memorized, we're ready to really start practicing. And there is a famous quote out there. I don't know who said it. Practicing doesn't begin until you're memorized. Before that, you're just learning notes. Which I was older before I could discipline myself to actually really embrace that much, that approach to practicing. But I'm a wholehearted believer. So once everything is memorized, I will typically find a routine. I will still be working from the end or within certain sections, taking it phrase by phrase, slow each day. One of my teachers really pounded into my head that every day we have to come in like it's a new piece, and start slow, put every note in place, and then over time, as the piece becomes more and more comfortable, that the amount of time it takes to practice everything that one feels like they need to practice will shrink to a certain point. So for something like, the Rachmaninoff B-flat minor sonata that I've done not too long ago, it's a 24-minute piece, and I could sort of shrink that down to took about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes to really give that a good practice. But that was after I had really learned everything, memorized. That was just what I felt, I needed to make sure that I touched every passage. So within that structure, I have a lot of techniques to keep practice from getting boring, because the worst thing is monotonous practice where we start zoning out and thinking about the grocery list, and I have to get the oil changed in the car, the grass has to be mowed, whatever, the house needs to be cleaned, and or worse, this student has this problem that I need to figure out, and start thinking about work. So seeking variety in practice really helps me a lot. Some of the techniques that I like, I call it the rhythm game, where I will subtly change the rhythm of particular passages, especially if it's a long passage of 16ths or 8th notes, where I will do, long, short, 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 long, short, 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 long, and then shift it by 1/16th note. So I get a lot of variety, a lot of reinforcement. Again, while forces us to stay conscious and conscientious. It's so easy to be distracted, and I think it's only gotten easier with our phones and notifications. As much as I beg my students to put the phone away when they practice, I'm not convinced that they're really able to do that. That it's always sitting there right next to them. And
the entire society is very distracting right now, and then we tend to really focus on too many things instead of really focusing on the thing that we are doing right now. The fact that we get distracted is also such a very damaging thing during the practice, and especially when you're practicing for a performance, because you get used to you train your brain to spaced out, and then your fingers will go because maybe you practice 10,000 times that kind of passage and your brain is not there, and you're doing something without being actually present, and that is damaging when then you're going to end up on the stage, because what happens is that your brain will go in the same direction that was used to go while you were practicing.
Yes, you're 1,000% right. And so this is where we have to practice playing through. Of course, all the kinds of practicing that I'm talking about, the detailed phrase by phrase kind of stuff, that for me at least, that stays. But then over time, there has to be practice playing through and practice. And it's not just about getting note to note, but like you said, making sure that our brain can stay focused. So I found that not only, of course, it's just playing through, very important, but also sometimes, especially as the performance gets close, I will go straight through twice, whether it's just a piece or an entire program, because I know if I can stay mentally focused for twice the length of the piece, then I should be okay to stay mentally focused for one repetition.
I remember one of my teachers in a Karlsruhe in Germany, she let me practice 5 times the entire program, 3 times the entire program slow, and 2 times at speed. 2 times slow, then 1 time slow, 1 time fast, and then later the entire program in once. But it was very usable because during the slow practice of the program, you force yourself to focus on every detail while imagining that piece being faster. And I think it's just, you imagine the piece as a slow motion movie, and with all the movements, all the details at slow motion, and then you expand that and you just like condense all the details in a faster tempo. When you try to prepare for a performance, the important thing is that you actually imagine that that piece is going to be performed, that you're not just playing and that you space out. What are the strategies that you use really to stay focused while you're practicing?
I think good habits, like you get used to it. And I think that was the best part. When I first went to college, I had never practiced in a practice room. I'd always practiced where my piano was in my house. And working in the practice room, it was so wonderful. You closed the door and the whole world stayed outside. And I always loved that about going to the practice room. And so I think part of it is that I've just done it for a long time, and it's a little more natural, and I'll sort of welcome that. It is a chance to escape from the banality of the day's events. Sometimes I'm just worried about some situation, and I just I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just gonna listen to this beautiful music or go through my practice routine. Certainly, I keep there's no noise when I practice. The TV isn't on. The phone is rarely in sight, and I set a goal. Really not based on time, like, okay, I'm not going to practice for an hour, but I'll set a goal, okay, I'm going to practice these 2 sections, or I'm going to practice the first movement. And then that way I always sort of have that end in sight. I'll do my work. I find it easier to not want to go check my email if I know, okay, I just have another page to work on, and then I'm good.
I really write down even the measures numbers at times, from measure this to measure that, so that the next day I can go back and say, okay, so now today I will add these 2 other measures. It's just a way to keep yourself accountable for what you're practicing, and the way that you want to practice, you plan ahead of time, and Also, the habit of listening to yourself, that's something that many students don't do while they're practicing. So they move their fingers and like not listen anymore to the sounds. But listening to yourself is just a great way to keep yourself in the moment of, the time that you're practicing and not thinking about too many things. Because if you don't listen to yourself, then it's very difficult to really stay focused.
Absolutely, yeah. We have to listen to ourselves. It's hard to get better if we don't listen to ourselves. Yeah, I was curious because there are some people who very much love this. I guess I would call it sort of like a practice journal that you were describing, and I was wondering if you did that with young. Did you the teacher start you maybe came to later in life?
I always did. I think I had my teacher writing my homework in my kind of homework book, and I always started writing down on certain pages what I was practicing. I mean, I was practicing 8 hours every day, and up to 12 at times during the summer because I didn't have school. But when I was practicing and still on some of my scores, there's still written down metronome up to 120 today. The next day, today up to 122, and then 126, and then 132. It's kind of a way to organize your mindset around the way that you practice. I think I always did it.
Yeah, what a great thing. A few others, just practice techniques that I like to use is sometimes everything goes in a heavy, detached touch. Slow, of course, but this was something that one of my teachers showed me that had been passed down from his teacher. Probably this is not shocking to anybody, but taking things very slow, very heavy, feeling the resistance at the bottom of the key. I also am a big fan of taking turns voicing out every different line, even if it's just an accompaniment line, because I think that it solidifies things. Also, we have to internalize all the sounds in our ear to be able to play reliably and accurately. So that includes all those accompaniment notes that maybe we don't want the audience to be focused on, but are still so important in contributing to the whole picture. Also, in terms of practicing that mental focus, I will sometimes sit quietly away from the piano and try to play the piece in my head, building it up from sections. If you're playing a 30-minute piece, it's really hard to sit and just listen in your head for 30 minutes, especially if you're not used to doing it. But you build up, you practice a few measures in your head and really envision how it feels, the fingering that you're using, the sounds that you will make. And I think that mentally prepares us for getting up on stage and playing through.
Yes, I think when we mentally think about a piece, we can focus more. So because we stay focused on the piece that is being played in that moment, and we cannot really kind of think other things because we are thinking about the music, right? In that moment, we are forcing ourselves to really kind of replay the music in our head without listening to the music, without listening to any sounds. It's just in our head. And the funny thing was, like, I had a meditation retreat last weekend, and it was 45 minutes meditation. You don't hear a sound. So, I was waiting for the sound of the bell to ring at one point, but it was like 45 minutes. It's a long time. So I started thinking about the Preludes Fugues by Bach. I know they're kind of 5 minutes-ish long. I started playing all of them in my head. And by the time the 45 minutes were over, I still was kind of able to stay focused. And I don't know if that was cheating in terms of meditation, but it kept me away from thinking other things. That made me realize something, that if we would perform like that, why? So keep listening to the music in your head while you're playing that music. That would allow you to stay actually focused on that music instead of just thinking, oh, the audience is coughing. Oh my God, somebody's moving. Oh, what are they thinking now? I made a mistake. This note is wrong, right? It would allow you to actually stay focused on what you're doing and just doing it without really kind of thinking about the audience and enjoying that at the same time, which is the important part of playing for an audience.
Yeah. I think you've hit upon the key idea in having a great performance is you get up on stage and you're not thinking about a fingering passage, will I hit this note right, or anything. You're just listening. You're just hearing the music in your head. And all of my best performances have come when I sing and just listen to the music in my head, and then it all comes out, and you're not even aware that you're nervous or that there's all this adrenaline. And so yes, practicing. That's why I think the mental practice is so valuable. Like you were saying, I mean, it is a meditation, and a very, very challenging meditation to as well, especially a fugue. In your head, you don't have a lot of nice cadential moments in most of the fugues until you get to the end. Right. So you really have to stay focused. That's a great. I think that is where I was headed with all of my ideas that I sketched out here. Was that in the end we simply sit down and we listen in our head, and then it happens if we've prepared well.
I had ballet classes and all those things, right? So when you prepare for a dance recital, right, you prepare every detail, from when you enter the stage up to when you exit the stage, up to how to smile, right? So all those small things are prepared in your choreography. And I think we miss to prepare that at times, besides the piece, besides playing the piece, playing everything. So we miss really kind of that preparation to that stage experience, that you go on stage prepared in a certain way, with a certain mindset, with a certain preparation, with certain movements. You go and bow on the stage, you sit down in a certain way, and you pray. All those things we think that should be natural because, who cares? I'm just going on the stage, right? So I'm not doing anything special, but you're doing something special because you're going on a stage in front of people, and that's what causes you to. And I think the fact that we don't prepare for that, or the ministers don't prepare for that, is what causes them to go on the stage and be unprepared, because you're not on the stage every day when you practice.
Yes, I think, I can tell you that I did have one teacher who made me repeatedly practice walking out on stage because my shoes were too loud, or I was walking too fast, or I was bowing too deep. It was a revelation because I don't think about this, but then she was right? You really have to think. You mentally prepare for every step, and part of the mental practice that I was talking about earlier, you envision yourself walking out on stage, right? Where am I gonna put my eyes? Am I gonna look at someone in the audience or not? All of those sort of things that are external to the music making, but still part of the performance.
I have some students going to a competition in Rochester tomorrow, and with them, I prepared even, I faked being their jury. I sat down, I put some kind of prop glasses. I don't wear glasses, but I said, okay, so let's imagine that I'm somebody else. I'm putting these glasses on. And imagine that I am another person. I changed my voice, kind of let them introduce themselves. And I was making that funny so that they have a fun experience also in preparing for that. But then I said, but you have to smile, because, if you smile, then, people think that you're happy to play. Then it's a beautiful experience if you smile, instead of just, going there and worried with a ugly face, and people think that you don't want to play. Imagine that. And we changed a little bit, the different patterns that we're using. Like smile, introduce your pieces, then sit down, take your time to think about the piece, stop a second before playing, think about the beginning of the piece, focus on that one piece, play the piece, stop, do that. And so everything has been prepared, right? I don't know if they're going to do that right tomorrow. Obviously, that's up to them. But then everything has been prepared over and over again, so that they are actually prepared for that experience. And then I said, well, at the end, you should be happy because you did something special. Something special for yourself and for the others. And just stay there, smile with the most beautiful smile that you have, bow, and then be happy that you've done it, regardless of the results, that you're going to have. But that kind of preparation, I think, I mean, I didn't have that exactly in that way. I had to prepare myself without my teacher, but I think that kind of preparation really helps them to mentally imagine and envision the experience of a performance, instead of just going there unprepared and say, I don't know what's going to happen. I go there, the pianist there, yeah, should I sit there, all those things.
Yes, absolutely right. I've seen it happen like many times. The student has never learned how to walk on the stage. They're not quite sure where to go. I know I have to get to the piano, but what if the bench isn't in the right place and I have to move it? I think that's a big one for little kids. And usually there's a parent or a teacher there to help. But yeah, anything that we can think of that will put them in that moment is really valuable. I know I used to, I was always told, imagine that Horowitz is sitting in your practice room. And of course, after running away, you come back perhaps and like, all right, here's the maestro. And I'm going to run through for him and like, imagine his ears listening to me. And
do you think it is useful to have a certain narrative in your head, like a story or a sort of an image of the piece that you're playing, or sort of kind of imaginary world that you're creating for the audience, or kind of you rather focus on other things?
I may not be focused deeply on something external when I'm on stage, but certainly I will always have a narrative. Where sometimes with Bach, I imagine the grandest cathedral and my sounds echoing through, or sometimes with Beethoven, I'm imagining brushstrokes on a canvas, or sometimes with Chopin, I'm imagining that I'm a poet and I'm writing just the right word. Oh, that resolution, I found just the right word at that moment. And sometimes it's more detailed. Sometimes it's less. Sometimes there's already a program, to the music. You think about a lot of Liszt's music. There are already ideas in place. As opposed to a sonata where maybe the ideas are a bit more vague. But no, I love dreaming things up, and I always push my students to find their narrative. I can share my narrative, but it's not going to be their narrative. What story are you telling? Is this an opera that's happening on stage, or is this someone walking through the forest thinking to themselves? This is so valuable.
Yeah, we can create such beautiful images, and then that doesn't mean that they have to be the same as the audience. The audience might listen to the piece and imagine something else. It doesn't matter, but still, if you give that image, the audience will have a chance also to kind of follow that kind of idea in their own way, so with their own imagination. But still, there is a connection between the notes that they can feel, right? Well, how we connect the notes to each other is different if you have an idea than if you don't have that idea in mind.
Yeah, I think that's at the heart of being a good communicator. You're not necessarily communicating a concrete idea from the stage, but you're communicating that this means something to you, that there's more than just beautiful sounds happening, that there's really I'm always a big fan of the journey. Like, take us on a journey, let the melody take me to neat places, new places that I haven't imagined before. Also, I know that we don't have loads of time, but we have access, with these phones, we have access to the ability to record ourselves. And as hard as it can be to watch ourselves play or listen to ourselves play, when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, it was a big deal to video record yourself, because you were probably lugging a big VHS camera or some sort of film. And now it's so easy to get a video recording, and you can see, oh wow, I'm physically struggling in this passage and I didn't even know it. When you see yourself, or why is this passage hard? I don't understand why this passage is hard. When I watch the video, my elbow's getting my hand out of position, right, or I'm tensing up there, and so all of my students, at various points in the learning process will record themselves and listen, because it's just so valuable.
Sometimes it was more useful to record myself than to have a lesson with my teacher, because I could just compare, a recording with my own playing, and I was like, I'm playing too slow, I'm slowing down, or I'm doing this. I started at one point to really kind of making notes on my scores about the mistakes that I was making in the recording, and then practicing those parts, and then make the recording again and say, okay, I improved that, or not. I have a question for you. So, what do you do after the performance?
Yeah. So after a concert, if it went decently or really or well, or even if it went very well, I will at least try to take that night to just celebrate. Teaching after, I don't know, usually I am so full of adrenaline, I can't sleep. I rarely sleep after a concert. Usually I want to eat something, if the time is right, if the time is appropriate, to drink something, and just to relish in that. I think it's important to recognize what we did, at least for a little while, even if it didn't go that well. Like, okay, tomorrow I will analyze and figure out how I can be better the next time, but at least for a moment, recognize the joy that comes with sharing what I love. So I don't know. I don't have a consistent after recital routine. When I was younger, it was right to the bar. Now, I like to celebrate, but I'm not interested in going out necessarily. And beforehand, the day before, the waiting for the concert is the worst. I try to sleep in as late as I can, practice and warm up, take a rest, practice, warm up lightly, not doing anything too intense. Always try to lay down, even if I don't sleep, lay down in the afternoon for at least an hour, just be still. I like to shower in the evening before a concert. It sort of makes me feel like it's the morning and I'm wide awake and ready to go. And then I like to get to the hall early. I walk into the green room at 1 minute before the concert and go. Before that, I'm usually in my studio or in a warm-up room, just doing some scales, maybe a little technique, touching a passage here and there, just trying to stay loose and not get freaked out about the audience or any particular passage that I know is maybe I wish I had practiced that a little bit more before I go on stage. But
before the performance, I avoid playing the pieces that I'm going to play right before, because obviously, if something happens, memory slip here, memory slip there, then that's going to happen again for sure, because just our mind will focus on that thing. We'll get worried about that thing. So I try really hard to avoid play from memory. Like I played and had piece, but maybe with the music in front of me, just without focusing on playing that from memory, just to warm up, right, for that kind of reason, and then not really kind of trying to create more problems for my memory or for the performance in general. So that's kind of, those are strategies that somebody has. I think it depends also from the personality, from everybody's a little bit different, but we have to adjust that. So it's kind of at times it's a matter of making some mistakes here and there, and then say, okay, good, I will do this next time. I will adjust that, and I will do that differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having some etudes, some good technical studies at your disposal to warm up with while you're killing time, that's what I like to do. I always have 3 or 4 Chopin etudes that I will pick up as I'm getting closer to a concert, and just start to bring them back, because they're such good, warm-ups, but also it's like you said, you don't want to be practicing the piece excessively right before you go on stage, because what if you do something wrong, or what if you forget? That's a devastating mental hurdle to overcome.
Right. Yes. Well, so I know that you play several concerts here locally. So what are your next plans? So
This fall, there's more collaborative stuff. I've got a couple of vocal programs, a saxophone recital, always challenging the saxophone rep. It's some solo stuff. I'm not learning anything big. I'm learning slowly, chipping away at the Prokofiev Romeo and Juliet suite, because it's just one of those things I've always wanted
that's
to
a
do.
beautiful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. And I recently ran across a video of Evgeny Kissin doing it in concert, and I almost wanted to stop because it's so remarkable what he can do. But that's exciting. I'm working on some other smaller pieces. There's a Myra Hess arrangement of Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, that is like a little diamond, and I must play it. My teacher, one of my teachers, always played it for encore, and I recently found a score.
I hope that was helpful to people who are preparing for a performance and would like to perform better. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella. I think teaching ourselves to perform is all about self-discovery, and it's a lifelong journey. And I encourage everybody to do it. You grow so much, and it's nothing else quite like it.